Couple months ago, the motor on my 34-year-old Belsaw went up in smoke one day, and it's just old and obsolete, and hard to get other parts for, like the rollers and stuff that I was getting near needing. So I decided to order a Grizzly planer. Now, at the time, they had brought out a new model that was only a 12-amp motor, and didn't really like it, so I waited till the beginning of the year when they brought back this 15-amp G0453Z model. UPS dropped the crate off at the end of my driveway with the tailgate delivery, which was nice, and then I rolled it down my driveway with a pallet jack. The crate was completely undamaged, which is like a miracle for UPS freight, because my two other shipments were beat up pretty bad. And so here it is, just kind of opening the crate, removing rubber straps, and, getting it ready to move into my shop. Now, it's about 15 degrees out with like about a 2-degree wind chill now. So, this is not a real fun job, but luckily most of the nails on the bottom of the crate had wiggled loose during shipping, so they just pulled right out. And I thought I would pick the crate right off, but it turned out to be a little too heavy for me, so I had to go back and take these little corner braces off that they had to hold it together, just a couple screws to be able to remove the side panel to access the planer and be able to get the crate off. So I take those corner braces off, and then there were just a couple of nails, and they pulled out fairly easy to to get the side panel off, and that pulled right off, and the planer was in there, and everything was in really good condition from what I could tell. They they had packed it on a crate with a lot of room around it, so there was really no way it would get damaged if the crate wasn't damaged. So this was really packed well, I feel, and they handled it good on the way there. So take the crate off, and then there's a little bit of plastic wrap there, and there's a box with the the parts that's just kind of sitting there under the planer bed there. So that just picked right out, and it was bolted to the pallet really good with some big metal braces, so that had held it in place. And that box actually contained the two tables for the planer, and there was a little note on it about other parts being packed down under the cabinet there. So you need a metric hex key to remove the screws that hold the panels on. And I wanted to take these off anyway so they wouldn't get damaged while I was moving it around to my shop. So, they came off pretty quick, and you just have to make sure you have a metric hex key around, because the toolkit is actually packed inside there. So after, removing the screws, the panel picked right off, and there was one more big box that was shoved up in there, and that contained the manual and a hardware pack and the extra inserts, and also the dust hood for the planer. And then down underneath there, laying on the skid, a little tough to get them out because the cords and everything were so cold from sitting out in my garage overnight. But I was able to, finally get these boxes out, and there were two more small boxes that were packed under there. One had the wheel for the front, and the other one had the big hand wheel for the up-down mechanism. So, and then there was a toolkit there I had to open up, because I decided I was going to put that wheel on first. I thought I could use that to roll into my shop. And so it was just, just a matter of there's a bolt in place there to pull it out, slip it back in, and, then put the nut, it's a nylock nut on it, put that back in and tighten that up. And then the top bracket, there's just a little C-clip on the shaft that you remove, slide the shaft back, put the that foot bracket to engage the wheel, in, and then just put the washer and the little C-clip, back in place. So that's a real quick thing. Now, originally I was thinking I could use that wheel to slide it through my shop, but after taking some measurements, it turned out that it was 32 inches in that direction, and it was only 27 or 28 with the pallet in the other direction. So it turned out I was going to have to go through my shop sideways anyway, so I just left it on the bolted to the skid for the moving process. This is something I wouldn't recommend that you do by yourself because it is quite a heavy piece of machinery, but I basically got it off the skid onto my pallet jack there, you can see. And luckily the ground was frozen, so I could use a pallet jack. I had the snow plow on my tractor, so I didn't have the loader on that, and I didn't want to change it around, so I just decided to use a pallet jack and hoped the frozen ground would keep it from sinking in, which actually it did for the most part. It was a pretty good yank, but I was able to pull it across the front of my house, and I had luckily plowed a spot a little while ago because I knew it was coming, and luckily we didn't have much snow right now. It had recently all melted, so it wasn't too bad a job for the most part, just getting around there. But once I got to the back side of my house, it became a little more of a problem where I didn't have all the snow cleared out, so I just had to put down a couple pieces of plywood to get it over to the door. And then, you can see now that I had to go through the door sideways because of the opening of the door. It wouldn't fit the other way. So I just put down some plywood strips, and, I was able to just kind of slide it off the pallet jack. And then I had some old, 1.25 inch dowels laying around that I cut to make some rollers out of it to help me get it through the door. So, the worst part of it was that it was so cold out, just, doing everything made it, you had to wear gloves and stuff. It made it tough, but I was able to use the rollers and just kind of slide it very tightly through the door with a real tight fit with everything. But, in the end, it went right through there with no problem. And it would help if I had, it would have been easier if I had some help, but, I did manage getting it in, and then using those rollers, I was able to move it into my shop right on the skid there so I could, start to dismantle it. I guess that's how they built the old pyramids, using rollers, and, that concept still works today. So, basically I just kind of got it positioned in my shop where it was a good spot to take it off, and used a crowbar to pick up the corners and get those rollers out. And there were two real nice brackets that had it, it was bolted down to that bottom skid, and they really did hold it in place and keep it from moving around during shipping. And I think that, they were really the reason why it arrived in such a good shape. So you just have to take off 4 screws on each bracket, and then remove the brackets. Then able to put down a 2x6 and just kind of roll it off the shipping skid there, and then once it was on the floor, just kind of rock it a little bit to get that 2x6 out from under it and let it move around on its own wheels. Surprisingly, it was really easy on the wheels that are on it, so it'll be easy to move around. It was shipped with that little control box turned sideways, and I had to get out the manual now and start looking at the assembly. It had a manual, and then there were a couple of update sheets where they had made changes to them over the years. So, these were included with the manual in case you ever need parts in the future. But, and then here's the hardware. That all came in a bag that looked like they had filled it with oil to keep it from rusting. So, everything was in good shape in that. So, and I started by putting that hand wheel on, and there was just a spacer and then a key, and then you put the hand wheel on, then a washer and a nut to hold it. So that was, a real simple to put on part. And then there was the little knob there for it that just screwed right into there, and you tightened it down. That allows you to move the table. And then this control box had 4 bolts coming up from the bottom of it that just had to be, removed. And then you turn the box and then you just put them back in and tighten it. So that was, just a couple second job. The tables came packed in plastic bags, and they looked like they were in good shape. And they seemed to be fairly ground really nice and flat and everything. So I just kind of got them out of bags. And then there were a couple set screws for adjusting the tables that have to be put in later. But I just figured, at this point it would be easier to just get them started in there. I just, put them in there so that they were flush with the surface to make it easier later when I have to adjust the tables. The coating the protective coating paper came right off the table, and I was really amazed how easy it was to clean these up. With my the joiner I bought from them and the table saw, it had like a real gooey, thick, tarry coating that took a long time to get off. But these just had like a thick oil that had been sprayed on them. That you sprayed WD-40 on them and give it about 2 seconds, and the oil would wipe right off. It was just amazing how easy this was to clean up compared to the other 2 Grizzly tools that I had purchased. So this this was just a real easy job cleaning them up. And then I had to let the table go down a little bit so I could get in there and clean that up. And luckily the table had the same coating on it. It was just kind of like an oil finish, and real easy to clean up. WD-40 seemed to cut it very easily, and then I was able to just remove it with paper towels without any scraping or hard work or anything. So with the tables cleaned up, I then just took an old piece of 2x6 I had laying around, and I clamped it good to the table, and I actually, just kind of brought the bed of the planer up until it held the table in place, just to make it easy to get the holes. And, when you're working by yourself, sometimes you've got to try and do stuff like this just to make it so you can, put things together without getting hurt. So there were 3 screws that went into the table, and then I just put them in, and I just snugged them up for now because I knew I had to go back later and adjust them. So the front table, the input table went in real easy, and then same thing with the output side. I just slid it in place. The 2x6 held it there while I got the screws in, and just kind of put the bolts in. And I just kind of put them in and just snugged them up for now to hold the table in place. So, once screws were in, snugged up, you're able to remove that. Next, I decided to remove that top cover that covers the spiral cutter head. I wanted to be able to see if I could get in there and clean up the cutter head and see what kind of a mess that would be. So you remove the 4 bolts up there, and then it just kind of picks off and swings right out of there and exposes the top of the cutter head. Now the cutter head actually was not covered in that thick grease either. It had like a real creamy light grease on it. So that didn't turn out to be too much of a mess to clean up either. I basically just took some paper towels and I started by just wiping whatever was loose off, and have to be real careful not to hit those carbide inserts because they are razor sharp. And then I just worked around it for maybe 15-20 minutes with WD-40 and some paper towels, and for the most part it seemed to come right off. So this was just an amazingly easy cleanup. Then the next thing I did is they tell you to check the oil in the gearbox, and the fill plug is really in a pain in the neck place to get to. So I took the plug out. They tell you put a wrench in it, check for oil, and looked like it was empty. So I went out my shop and I got the pump for my outboard motor, and then I had picked up some 8090 gear oil from Tractor Supply, a little while ago because I knew you were going to need it. And this was a real easy job to use that little outboard motor pump that is used for filling the gearbox on a Mercury motor, to just use that to pump it in. The end of it fit right in the hole with no problem, so there was, really no mess, and, it was easy to just fill the box up. Once the box was filled, I took that plug and I took off the old Teflon tape, and I just put some new Teflon on there to be safe. And then, it's kind of, like I said, that plug's kind of like a pain to get to, but, just put that back in, tighten it up, and you're pretty much good to go. And I just went over the cutter head with some WD-40 and paper towels a couple more times, and it came out real shiny and clean. It seemed like there's still a little tiny bit in between the edges you couldn't get out, but figured that would come out the first time I used it. So that this was really a super simple cleanup, and then you put that top cover back on and have to put that little diverter for the dust hose there on. That was pretty simple to get on there. You just the top screws drop down through from the top, and you put the nuts on the inside, which I really don't like this setup. Probably sometime in the future I'll look at putting inserts in so there's not a loose nut hanging down in there. And then you have to put 3 socket head bolts in from the back there, and you have to kind of put your hand in and pry it down to get them aligned. They're not quite perfectly aligned when you put it in place. And on the other corner, actually, I had to use a piece of wood to pry that corner down to get it down enough so I could get the bolt started. But in the end, it wasn't too bad. And like I said, I really don't like having the nuts on the inside of these top ones. But I'll do something about that to fix it in the future. It really was pretty easy to put on there, though. So the next thing I had to hook up the dust hose, and it's just a standard 4-inch hose from my other planer that actually fit right on there, nice, and here just putting a clamp on to keep it from slipping off. So that worked out real nice. And as you can see, I run my planer into one of those Cyclone garbage can collectors, and then into my dust collector there, because otherwise the bag gets filled up immediately. So now it was time to go back and level up the tables. So I got a nice straight level that I used for this kind of stuff, and there you can see, with the bolts just snugged up, it was sagging quite a bit. So this would probably took about the longest part of anything, trying to get these tables leveled up. You had to pick it up, you had to tighten the set screw a little bit, and then go back and tighten the mounting bolts. And it was just like a constant thing where you'd loosen one and tighten the other, and it would swing back a little bit, and you just had to keep going back and forth until you got it right. So there you can see the output table also was sagging, and that had to be adjusted also. And there was some like tape on top of the labels here, and that was kind of a pain. You had to be real careful, because if you just pulled it off, the numbers would come off with it. So you had to just carefully yank that off and try to make sure that the numbers and letters stayed down on there. So there it is. The power cord was almost 6 feet long, so it reached my outlet from the other one, and everything's basically ready to go now. The assembly was real simple. I think I spent about maybe 2 hours total by the time I got everything cleaned up and aligned and hooked up and ready to go. And the fit and finish of this was really excellent. I'm real happy with it. So now here I did the first start up, and I was going to try planing I had a real piece of old knotty garly cut off ash that I was going to start with, just to see how it worked. And as you can hear, the dust collector actually is louder than the planer. This was really amazing, because my old planer used to really be extremely loud. This was so much better. And it seemed to, I've got it on low speed now, and it seemed to feed quite a bit faster than the old Belsaw did also. The dust collection seems to be working good, and the whole planer on the overall really seems to be working good. But I started with this old piece of wood because there was some WD-40 left, I think, on the edges of the cutter heads and stuff. And you could see that every time the board went through, it did have a oily, you see some coating on it. So I kept doing some thin passes just until everything got cleaned up, and the oil kind of disappeared just for my test run. So I'm real happy the way it's working right now. So basically, I really like my old planer had rubber feed rollers, and you really had to push the board in to get a grip, and this one has serrated metal, so it's real easy to feed this one also compared to the old Belsaw I had. It just grabs the wood and pulls it in without too much of a push. So I'm real happy with it so far, and this is the first piece that I planed, and I did measure it later, and it turns out there is a 10,000ths taper across this from end to end of that, so I will have to level the bed. I'll do that later on, but basically looking at the piece, it's a real nasty piece that had knots in it, and I don't know if you can see, but the finish is actually looks like it's sanded and polished from these cutters. I'm really amazed, and this was a gnarly old piece my other planer would have chipped out all kinds of chunks out of, and there was no tear out on it. There was just a perfectly smooth, almost polished feeling finish on it. So it really amazed me how good a cut I got on this. So I think in the long run I'm going to be real happy with it. Like I said, I still have to level the bed because there is a 10,000ths taper in the board, but that'll be easy. And the dust collection actually got 100% of the dust, and there's a little kit with 4 extra inserts if you ever need them in the in the future. So I'll keep you posted on how it works out in the future, but so far I really love this new machine. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.